Good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank the organizers of the conference for the opportunity to share my research on AI framing of self-determination in Southeast Asia. Here's a map for our next few minutes together. As an early adopter of AI in my communications work, I am deeply interested in how the public adopts and uses AI. As a researcher exploring language, rhetoric, and discourse from a critical perspective, I am interested in how AI frames specific topics. My dissertation focuses on mapping self-determination as a field of study to foster more effective dialogue and negotiation and to clarify self-determination conflicts. Globally, generative AI use is expanding rapidly. A 2024 study by Deloitte Asia Pacific found that 43% of employees and 80% of students are using generative AI across the region. They also estimated that more than 11 billion work hours are impacted by generative AI each week across Asia Pacific region. At the same time, self-determination conflicts persist across Southeast Asia, with ongoing disputes and negotiations in countries like Myanmar, the Philippines, Indonesia, and Thailand. This research aimed to answer the following questions regarding AI framing of self-determination in Southeast Asia. The following conceptual definitions are relevant to this research. Self-determination, as understood in modern political and legal contexts, originated with U.S. President Woodrow Wilson at the end of World War I. It was advanced by the League of Nations and formalized in the UN Charter in 1945, with further clarification in the international covenants and declarations from 1948 to 2024. Despite being over a century old, self-determination has significant gaps. The major points of contention in self-determination are legitimacy, sovereignty, territorial integrity, who can access the right, and what does the right guarantee. Some scholars in court cases have made a distinction between internal and external self-determination. Robert Entman theorized that framing social and political issues encompasses four functions. It defines the problem, diagnoses causes, makes moral judgments, and suggests remedies. Ray Tai traces the origins of political economy as an interdisciplinary field back to ancient philosophers, referencing Confucius' statement, "Everything under heaven is for the common good." Robert Gilfin defines three schools of political economic theory: liberal capitalism, economic nationalism, and Marxism, and describes how each interprets the interactions between states, businesses, and the market economy. Shields 1999 and Sayer 2001 advocate incorporating a critical cultural perspective into political economy, while McMurdy highlights the importance of critical social approaches in the field. Post-colonial theorists like Fanon, Said, and Asamoah and Robinson use critical approaches to connect political economy to interstate conflicts, self-determination demands, and revolutions. For the purpose of this paper, to better articulate the differences between internal and external self-determination, I have reconceptualized them as domestic self-determination and sovereign self-determination. The generative AI description reflects the use case of AI in this paper, while the definition of political economy reflects its connections with self-determination. This research used a systematic, grounded, mixed methods approach to explore how AI models frame the issue of self-determination in Southeast Asia. I conducted structured interviews with three generative AI models, ChatGPT, Google Gemini, and Perplexity AI, on the topic of self-determination in Southeast Asia. RQ1 is addressed by coding the interviews using an open coding format based on Entman's four aspects of framing. The interviews were also coded based on the four aligning aspects of self-determination and political economy. This data is then used to analyze RQ2 and RQ3. So how does AI frame the problem? Is it a sovereignty issue or a domestic problem? Domestic framing dominated ChatGPT's answers, while the other models were more balanced in their portrayals. The increase of the co-occurrence of codes and the balanced portrayals is notable. When defining the problem of self-determination, the models agree that it was first and foremost a political problem, but they acknowledged that the other factors also played a meaningful role. All three of the models frame political issues as the primary cause of self-determination conflicts, with cultural factors being the second most common. Regarding ambiguity over what legitimizes the self-determination movement, ChatGPT and Perplexity AI used language that described legitimizing factors significantly more than illegitimizing factors, while Google Gemini was more balanced in its judgment of the topic. The three models agree to varying degrees that moral judgments regarding self-determination are first political in nature and social at a secondary level. Economic factors were largely unaccounted for in moral legitimacy arguments. Similarly, all three models agreed that remedies were first political in nature and social second. The models were divided over the organization of priorities between economic and cultural factors. Now let's look into the strengths and weaknesses of the model's framing. An important strength is the model's agreement on the significance of political factors, aligning with the global view of self-determination as a political and legal conflict. However, a weakness lies in the misalignment between the secondary factors. While cultural and economic factors dominate the problem's definition and causes, the secondary legitimizing factors do not align with these. Models indicate social factors as the second most influential in legitimizing self-determination movements, with economic factors being the least important. Social factors also dominate in suggested remedies, relegating cultural factors to the least important role. This misalignment of secondary factors is a potential weakness as the proposed solutions do not align with the problems and underlying causes they aim to address. Notably, while culture is framed as a cause 30% of the time, it only appears as a solution 11% of the time, with social remedies substituted instead. The AI model's framing is significant because they derive their answers from analyzing language patterns across millions of sources, creating a meta-answer based on probabilities of word combinations. Misalignment in AI models suggests inconsistencies in the source material, which spans various disciplines and platforms. Cultural factors like forced assimilation, exclusion, and marginalization, alongside political economic factors such as poverty, inequality, and resource domination, are identified as key drivers of self-determination demands that can escalate into political disputes. This aligns with critical works in political economy and post-colonial theory, notably Why Nations Fail by Darren Acemoglu and James Robinson, and The Wretched of the Earth by Frantz Fanon, which emphasize the importance of cultural, economic, and social factors in self-determination discussions. The emphasis on social solutions in the face of cultural causes is potentially problematic. AI models' framing of self-determination is significant because it can influence public perception of peacebuilding and geoeconomic development in the region. By emphasizing political and social aspects, the models downplay the cultural dimensions of self-determination, such as the search for recognition, respect, and distinction, and sideline economic imbalances and injustices. The gap between political and social factors prioritizes the power structures of existing nations, framing social remedies like mediation, negotiation, and dialogue as counterbalances to state power. While these social remedies align with current peacebuilding practices, the lack of focus on geoeconomic development marginalizes the role of economic interventions, essential tools for addressing the underlying economic grievances fueling many self-determination conflicts. In summary, AI framing of self-determination is unable to clarify the confusion between sovereign and domestic self-determination, lacks clarity on what constitutes a legitimate self-determination movement, and marginalizes economic development remedies while embracing social peace-building solutions. Here's a list of references for this presentation. I'm happy to answer your questions at this time.